Hi, this is Charles Linden. I want to talk to you about phobias. There are two types of phobia: specific phobia and anxiety-related phobia. Now you might think they sound like the same thing because without fear a phobia can't exist, but they're not. Specific phobias are phobias like fears of heights or fears of spiders, for example. These sorts of phobias are specific because they only happen when you're confronted with the thing that most frightens you. But anxiety-related phobias only exist when you have an anxiety disorder. Now these phobias have many names. Agoraphobia is the most common one. Social phobia is another. Social phobia occurs when you have problems facing social situations, going to dinner parties, going to parties, seeing people in the street and talking to them, for example. Anxiety disorders take many forms, and the phobias associated with those anxiety disorders usually prevent the person from leaving home. They can also prevent the person from driving their car, leaving home without an escort, a family member or a friend. These kind of phobias are specifically anxiety disorder related because they're driven by the anxiety disorder. Now let me explain why that is. Anxiety disorders are fueled by the amygdala. They're stored in the amygdala and they're perpetuated in the amygdala. The amygdala is this small organ in the brain that controls the anxiety response. When the amygdala becomes reset at a higher than normal benchmark level of anxiety, an anxiety disorder is formed, and this happens when somebody has done something called operant conditioning, and this is the type of learning that happens when you learn by repetition. For example, if you're learning to speak a foreign language or play an instrument or maybe drive a car. So you're learning by repetition. And what happens during an anxiety disorder is that your fear, your initial fear, the catalyst for your fear, sparks an anxious moment. And that anxious moment snowballs. It causes the symptoms of anxiety, the thoughts of anxiety. And those fears, those thoughts, those sensations then spark more anxiety. And the cycle continues. And all this time your subconscious mind, your amygdala, is learning that this new behaviour, this new anxious behaviour, is normal. And it adopts that as your normal anxiety level. So, what is a phobia? A phobia is a symptom of an anxiety disorder. Even with specific phobias that we've already discussed, where you're frightened of snakes or heights, for example, these fears only exist because you're inappropriately anxious about the fear-inducing stimuli. In the case of a snake phobia, it's snakes, and so people who are exposed to a snake will have a phobic reaction, an anxiety reaction. But these kind of anxiety disorders, these kind of phobias, can be kept under control by the person who suffers from them because they avoid the situations where they're going to be confronted by that fear-inducing stimuli. So they stay away from snakes. Now, an anxiety disorder, a phobia such as agoraphobia or social phobia, is very difficult to avoid because avoiding it automatically means that you're cutting yourself off from society. And in most cases that just isn't practical to do. People with mild anxiety disorder might have mild agoraphobia, which seems to try and prevent them from going to work, for example. And obviously that just isn't practical. People have to go to work to earn money. But sometimes the anxiety disorder gets so out of hand that they stop going to work. And this causes massive problems for the sufferer. I did this during my anxiety disorder. I became very withdrawn, and eventually I stopped going to work. And this caused financial problems. And those financial problems snowballed and got bigger and bigger until they were one of the catalysts for my anxiety. So my anxiety was causing me to not go to work, not going to work was causing me not to have any money, not having any money was causing anxiety, and so on and so forth. Eventually it becomes a catch-22 situation and the sufferer feels completely trapped. So, what's the solution then? Whether it's social phobia or agoraphobia you suffer from, whether you can't leave the house, or whether you can leave the house but you find it difficult to cope in social situations, it's an impractical condition. And it's pointless, because you can override this. And all you need to do that is undermine this subconscious reaction in the amygdala, this subconscious anxious habit that drives the phobia. Because you're not really frightened of going out of the house, you've done it for many years. And suddenly to become frightened of something like that means that, of course, it is completely inappropriate. You know there's nothing to be fearful of. But as soon as you open the front door, your heart starts to race, your palms begin to sweat, and you get all the sensations and symptoms of an anxiety disorder. You may even have a panic attack. But you know it's inappropriate. Your subconscious mind is working on autopilot. Every time you open that door, a trigger is released in your mind. A trigger that says, if I go outside, I'm going to panic. You know consciously that that isn't the case, that going outside can't cause you to panic. But your amygdala has learned that that is the case. And again, this conscious cycle of anxious behaviour is conditioning your amygdala to believe that your inappropriate anxiety about leaving the house or getting in the car or going somewhere without a chaperone is actually absolutely necessary, because it's part of your subconscious behaviour. And it's as normal as your circulation or anything else that happens in your autonomic nervous system. But you know consciously that it's wrong. So how do we fix it? Very simply, we undermine the subconscious anxious habit that you've built in your amygdala. We take it away completely, eliminate it 100%, and by doing that, the phobia has absolutely no reason to exist, because without fear, without anxiety, without inappropriate anxiety, your phobia is nonsensical. So in order to do this, what we have to do is reprogram your amygdala with non-anxious software. Now I know that sounds simplistic, but it's absolutely true. It's like sticking a floppy disk into your forehead and downloading a new set of rules for your amygdala. You have learned through behaving anxiously after the first anxious catalyst that you experienced. You have learned that your subconscious anxious behaviour is completely normal. It isn't, but your amygdala thinks it is. So now we have to reprogram it to believe that it isn't, to render that anxious behaviour obsolete and replace it with non-anxious behaviour. And that requires legwork. This isn't about psychology or psychiatry or medication. Those things can't work. Sure, cognitive behavioural therapy will teach you a new set of rules by which to lead your life in order to eliminate the anxiety, trying to change your behaviour. But it's short-lived, because between sessions you forget what the psychologist has said to you, you forget the rules, you forget what to do, you become disempowered by your own fear, and you get home and you think, now what was it I was supposed to do? I'm too scared anyway, I can't do it. The Linden method doesn't let you do that. It gives you a very, very clear set of rules to follow, the 9 pillars. And if you don't follow the rules, it won't work. But what I have to say is that if it isn't working, you're doing something incorrectly, because this works 100% of the time. Because the Linden method, the 9 pillars, and this new set of principles are the solution to anxiety disorder. Not one of a group of solutions, they are the solution. This is what every single recovered anxiety and phobias sufferer has done to completely eliminate their anxiety disorder, to eliminate their phobias, and to return to a full and active life, without the constraints of feeling phobic about anything. Now I can say from experience that this works because I've done it. I have to tell you now, my phobia drove me to the edge of insanity, believe me. I used to wrap myself in a blanket, huddled against a radiator in my living room, watching television, just waiting for the 9 hours to pass until my girlfriend came home to rescue me from my fear. I wouldn't leave the house. I couldn't leave the house. I did on one occasion get to the corner shop, which was about 100 yards from my house, and somebody had to come and fetch me. I had to phone somebody to fetch me from the shop. I was absolutely petrified. That is not normal. And as soon as I realised that that wasn't normal, and as soon as I realised that this was being fueled by inappropriate anxiety, anxiety that I could control, but not only that, but anxiety that I could actually override and eliminate myself through behaviour, as soon as I realised that, it disappeared 100%. And why? Because I reprogrammed the amygdala to believe that my subconscious anxious habit was futile. I rendered it obsolete, and I reprogrammed my amygdala with non-anxious behaviour. And you do this by practicing, by doing the legwork that I outline in the Linden Method pack. And by doing this and doing it correctly, and I mean doing it correctly, because if you leave one element out, it just won't work. But by doing it correctly, which is very, very simple, you will undermine that subconscious anxious behaviour and eliminate your anxiety. And in turn, because your anxiety is retreating, your phobias will disappear. I went from being in that position, sat huddled in my living room watching television for 9-10 hours a day, and then only moving between the kitchen, the bathroom and my bedroom. I went from that to being back at work in 6 weeks. I went from that to being out of the house in 1 week. I went from that to being in the park in 2 weeks. And after 4 months I was going abroad on an aeroplane. Something I never thought I would do again. I never believed in my wildest dreams that I could behave normally again. And now I'm a married man who has a business, who goes abroad regularly on business trips and also on pleasure trips. I don't have any problem leaving the house, and I don't have one tiny fragment of that phobia left in my body. And this is true of every anxiety and phobia sufferer that I help. Every complying person, every single client that complies to my method overrides and eliminates their anxiety and phobias. And this is fact. This is how the brain works. The amygdala is in control, subconsciously. You've given it that control mechanism. Your body has been built genetically to have this control over your emotions and over your anxious behaviour. You've fed it new software to become anxious. Your life experiences have created, through operant conditioning, this new level of anxiety. Now is the time to override it and eliminate it, and you will do it. Don't fear your phobia. Don't fear your anxious sensations. They are only sensations. They cannot harm you. They're as important as an itch in the centre of your back that you can't reach. They're irritating, but they are not important, and they certainly aren't threatening. You have to make a conscious decision now to override your anxiety and eliminate your phobias forever. And you can do it using the method pack. You have the method pack, use it. And if you don't use it correctly, it won't work. But if you use it correctly, it will. And we're always here to guide you should you need guidance. I want you to really consider what I've said, because hand on heart, my truth to you is that this is the solution. It is the only solution. And you will do this. So read all the information, move forward every day, give yourself new challenges, move through life in a positive way, undermine that subconscious anxious reaction and replace it with normal, non-anxious behaviour, and you will be well again soon, I promise you. This has got nothing to do with mental or physical illness. You have a behavioural condition that you can eliminate yourself without my help. Thank you for listening to me, and I really hope this empowers you to move forward. If you need any help, you know where to find us. And good luck with your anxiety-free life. Take care.